So, hello everyone, and welcome to Wise IAS. Continuing in the series of disaster management, आज हम disaster management in context to Indian political framework as well as the institutional mechanisms for the purpose. ये सारा टॉपिक डिस्कस करेंगे. अगेन ये ऐप डाउनलोड करने का रिक्वेस्ट वाइज आईएएस जो हम हैं आपको मालूम. सो कमिंग डायरेक्टली टू द टॉपिक. तो अगर बैकग्राउंड की बात करें डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट इन इंडिया, डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट इन इंडिया की अगर बात करें तो हम थोड़ा समय पीछे जाएंगे और इंडिया का एक सिचुएशन देखेंगे कि इंडिया में डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट किस तरीके से आया, क्या जरूरत थी और क्या अभी का स्टेटस. इंडिया हैज बीन ट्रेडिशनली वल्नरेबल टू नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स on account of its unique geoclimatic conditions. Floods, droughts, cyclones, earthquakes, and landslides have been a recurrent phenomenon. फ्लड्स, ड्रॉट, साइक्लोन, अर्थक्वेक ये बार बार आते रहते हैं. इंडिया में ये बहुत कॉमन है. अबाउट 60% ऑफ द लैंड मास in India is prone to earthquakes of various intensities. तो बहुत सारी अलग अलग इंटेंसिटीज के अर्थक्वेक्स जो हैं वो यहाँ आते रहते हैं. अबाउट 60% ऑफ लैंड मास. तो जितना भी हमारे पास लैंड मास है आधे से ज्यादा इज प्रोन टू अर्थक्वेक्स. So, over 40 million hectares is prone to floods. 40 million hectares. About 8% of the total area is prone to cyclones. 68% of the area is susceptible to droughts. In the decade 1990 से लेकर 2010 तक, an average of about 4,344 people lost their lives. About 30 million people were affected by disasters हर साल. This loss in terms of private, community and public assets has been astronomical. At the global level अगर हम देखें, there has been considerable concern over the natural disasters even as substantial scientific and material progress is made. बहुत सारी तरक्की करने के बावजूद भी आज हम एक कंसर्न रखते हैं इन नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स के. The loss of life and property due to disasters has not decreased. कम नहीं हुआ. जितनी मर्जी तरक्की हो गई साइंटिफिक तरीके से या अदरवाइज, मटेरियल प्रोग्रेस हो गई, पर लॉस ऑफ लाइफ क्या हम कंट्रोल कर पाए? नहीं. In fact, the human toll and economic losses have mounted. बल्कि ये बढ़ गए हैं. It was in the background that the United Nations General Assembly in 1989 declared the decade of 1990 से 2000 as the International Decade for Natural Disasters Reduction with the objective to reduce the loss of life and property and restrict socio-economic damage through connected international actions, especially in the developing countries. The super cyclone in Odisha अक्टूबर 1999 में आया था and the भुज earthquake गुजरात में 2001 जनवरी में. underscored the need to adopt a multi-dimensional endeavor involving diverse scientific engineering, financial and social processes. The need to adopt multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral approach in the incorporation of risk reduction in the developmental plans and strategies. Right? Over the past, you can say, couple of years, the government of India has brought about a paradigm shift in the approach to disaster management. The new approach proceeds from the new approach proceeds from the convention and that development cannot be sustainable unless disaster mitigation is built into the development process. Another cornerstone of the approach is that mitigation has to be multidisciplinary, spanning across all the sectors of the development. The new policy also emanates from the belief that investments in mitigation are much more cost effective than expenditure on the relief and rehabilitation. जितने में आप उन चीजों को कम करने की कोशिश कर देंगे उससे कहीं ज्यादा खर्चा उन चीजों को ठीक करने में आता है. Disaster management occupies an important place in the country's policy framework as it is the poor and the underprivileged who are worst affected on account of calamities and disasters. The steps being taken by the government enumerate from the approach outlined we have discussed above. The approach has been translated into a national disaster framework. National disaster framework, remember, it is an important term. It is a roadmap that is covering institutional mechanisms, disaster prevention, strategy, early warning system, disaster mitigation, preparedness, response, human resource development. The expected inputs, area of intervention, and agencies to be involved at the national, state, and district level have been identified and listed in the roadmap. This roadmap has been shared with all the state governments and UTs, administrations, ministries, and the Department of Government of India and the state governments, UTs, administrations have been advised to develop their respective roadmaps, taking the national roadmap as a broad guideline. There is therefore now a common, you can say, strategy underpinning the action being taken by all the participating organizations and stakeholders. So, what is done on a basic level? A basic roadmap is prepared by the central authority. On that roadmap, the states, administrations, UTs, they are preparing their own roadmap. But the guidance and guidelines are followed, which are framed by the central ministry. Then coming to the institutional and policy framework. So if we talk about the institutional and policy framework, the institutional and policy mechanisms for carrying out response, relief, and rehabilitation have been well established since independence. आज़ादी के बाद से ये बहुत स्ट्रांग हो चुके हैं. These mechanisms have proved to be robust and effective in so far as response, relief, and rehabilitation are concerned. At the national level, the Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal ministry for all the matters concerning disaster management. The Central Relief Commissioner CRC in the Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal officer to coordinate the relief operations for natural disasters. The CRC receives information relating to the forecasting, warning of a natural calamity from Indian Meteorological Department IMD or from the Central Water Commission of Ministry of Water Resources on a continuing basis. The ministries, departments, organizations concerned with the primary and secondary functions relating to the management of disasters that are including India Meteorological Department, Central Water Commission, Ministry of Home, you can say the Home Affairs, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Urban Development, Department of Communications, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Petroleum, Ministry and Department of Agriculture and Cooperatives, Cooperation, Ministry of Power, Department of Civil Supplies, Ministry of Railways, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Planning Commission, Cabinet Secretariat, Department of Surface Transport, or you can say the new Niti Ayog in place of the Planning Commission, Ministry of Social Justice, Department of Women and Child Development, Ministry of Environment and Forest, Department of Food. Each ministry, department, and organization nominate their nodal officer to the Crisis Management Group chaired by the Central Relief Commissioner. The nodal officer of the group is responsible for preparing sectoral actions, plan, emergency support, you can say, and function plan for managing disasters. अब हम कुछ ये मिनिस्ट्रीज के द्वारा बनाई गई कुछ अथॉरिटीज, कुछ कमिटीज या कुछ ऐसी अथॉरिटीज को डिस्कस करेंगे जो इन सारी चीज़ों के लिए इंडिया में रिस्पॉन्सिबल है. ये छोटे छोटे इंट्रोडक्शन में हम कुछ चीज़ों को डिस्कस करेंगे. आप इन पे इनके नाम और इनके फंक्शन पे खासा ध्यान दीजिए. Now, dealing with the first one here, the National Crisis Management Committee. नेशनल क्राइसिस मैनेजमेंट कमेटी एनसीएमसी की अगर हम बात करते हैं, कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी who is the highest executive officer, heads the NCMC, secretariats of all the concerned ministries and departments. As well as organizations are the members of the committee. The NCMC gives direction to the crisis management group as deemed necessary. The Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs. The Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs is responsible for, he is responsible for, you can say, all the actions, all the development and ensuring that all the developments are brought to the notice of NCMC promptly. The NCMC can give directions to any ministry, any department, any organization for the specific action needed for meeting the crisis situation. Right? Next, we are going to do crisis management group. The Central Relief Commissioner in the Ministry of Home Affairs is the chairman of crisis management group, consisting of the senior officers called the nodal officers from various concerned ministries. The CMG's function are to review every year contingency plan formulated by various ministries, departments, organizations in their respective sectors, measures required for dealing with a natural disaster, coordinate the activities of the central ministers and the state governments in relation to disaster preparedness and relief to obtain the information from the nodal officers on measures relating to the above. The CMG in the event of natural disasters meets frequently to review the relief operations and extend all possible assistance required by the affected states to overcome the situation efficiently. The resident commissioner of the affected state is also associated with such meetings. Then next is your central room emergency operation room. इसको आप कह सकते हैं एक तरीके से कंट्रोल रूम या इमरजेंसी ऑपरेशन रूम एंड इमरजेंसी ऑपरेशन सेंटर control room exists in the nodal ministry of home affairs which functions round the clock to assist the central relief commissioner in the discharge of his duties. The activities of the control room include collection and transmission of information concerning natural calamity and relief, keeping a close contact with the government of the affected states, interaction with the other central ministries, department, organizations in connection with the relief, maintaining records containing all relevant information relating to the action points and contact points of the central ministries, keeping up to date details of all the concerned officers of the central or you can say the state level. Then next is your contingency action plan. A national contingency action plan for dealing with the contingencies arising in the wake of natural disasters has been formulated by the government of India and it had been periodically updated. It facilitates the launching of relief operations without delay. The CAP Contingency Action Plan identifies the initiatives required to be taken by various central ministries or departments in the wake of natural calamities. It sets down the procedure and determines the fiscal points in the administrative machinery. Then next is your state relief manuals. Each state government has state relief manuals, codes which identify that role of each officer in state for managing the natural disasters. These are reviewed and updated periodically based on the experience of managing the disaster and the need of the state. So these are prepared as per the different states differently. Then your next is the funding mechanism. थोड़ा lengthy है today's topic as purely theoretical based. The policy and the funding mechanism for the provision of relief assistance to those affected by the natural calamities is clearly laid down. These are reviewed by the Finance Commission which is appointed by the government of India every 5 years. The Finance Commission, which is responsible, is making recommendations regarding the division of tax and non-tax revenue between the central and the state government, and also regarding the policy for the provision of relief assistance and their share of expenditure therein. A calamity relief fund, CRF, has been set up in each state as per the recommendation of the 11th Finance Commission. The size of the calamity relief fund has been fixed by the Finance Commission after taking into account the expenditure on relief and rehabilitation over the past 10 years. The Government of India contributes 75% of the corpus of calamity relief fund in each state. 25% is contributed by the states. Relief assistance to those affected by natural calamities is granted from CRF. Overall norms for relief assistance are laid down by the National Committee, with representatives of the states as the members. Different states can have, you can say, the state specific norms to be recommended by the state level committee under the chief secretary. When the calamity is of such a proportion that the funds available in the CRF will not be sufficient for the provision of relief, the state seeks assistance from the National Calamity Contingency Fund. A fund created, which is a fund created by the central government level, when such requests are received, and when such requests are received and the requirements are assessed by a team from the central government, and thereafter the assessed requirement are cleared by the high level committee chaired by the deputy minister. In brief, you can say the institutional arrangement for the response and relief are well established and have proved to be robust and effective. Now, if we talk about in India, in a federal setup of India, the basic responsibility for undertaking the rescue, relief, and rehabilitation measures in the event of a disaster is that of a state government concerned. At the state level, response, relief, and rehabilitation are handled by Department of Relief and Rehabilitation. The State Crisis Management Committee, set up under the chairmanship of the Chief Secretary, who is the highest executive functionary in the state. All the concerned departments and the organizations of the state, central government, departments located in the state are represented in the committee. The committee reviews the action taken and the response and relief, and give guidelines, directions as and when necessary. A control room is also established under the relief commissioner. The control room is in constant touch with the climate monitoring, forecasting agencies, and monitors the action being taken by various agencies in performing their responsibilities. The district level is the key level for disaster management and relief activities. The collector, deputy commissioner, and the chief administrator in the district, he is the focal point, or he is the centric point in the preparedness, or you can say in the preparation of a district plan, and in directing, supervising, and monitoring the calamities for relief. A district level coordination and relief committee is constituted and is headed by the collector as chairman, with the participation of all the related government and non-governmental agencies and department, in addition to the elected representatives. The collector is required to maintain close liaison with the district and the state government, as well as the nearest units of the armed forces, CRP, central police organizations, and other relevant central government organizations like the ministries and and communications, Ministry of Communications, water resources, drinking water, surface transport, who could supplement the efforts of the district administration in the rescue and relief operations. The efforts of the government and non-government organization for response and relief are coordinated by the collector or deputy collector. The district magistrate, yeah, district collector, and the coordination committee under him reviews the preparedness measures prior to impending hazards and coordinate response when the hazard strikes. As all the departments of the state governments and district level report to collector, there is an effective coordination mechanism ensuring the holistic response. Now, coming to the new institutional mechanisms. As has been made clear in the above discussions we made, the existing mechanisms have based on post-disaster relief and rehabilitation, and they have proved to be robust and effective mechanism in addressing these requirements. The changed policy approach, however, mandates a priority in full disaster aspect of mitigation, prevention, and preparedness, and new institutional and policy mechanisms are being put in place to address the policy change. Now, if we talk about it is proposed to constitute a national emergency management authority. A national emergency management authority is proposed at the national level. The high-powered Committee on Disaster Management, which was set up in August 1999 and submitted its report in 2008, had inter alia recommended that a separate Department of Disaster Management is to be set up in the Government of India. It was, however, felt that the conventional ministries, departments have the drawback of not being flexible enough to especially in terms of the sanction procedures. The organization of the apex level will have to be multidisciplinary with the experts covering a large number of branches. The National Emergency Management Authority has therefore been proposed as the combined secretariat directorate structure. A structure will be an integral part of the government and therefore will work with the full authority of the government while at the same time retaining the flexibility of the organization. The National Emergency Management Authority will be headed by an officer of rank of the Secretary, Special Secretary to the Government and the Ministry of Home Affairs, with special secretaries and additional secretaries from the ministries and departments of health, water resources, environment, forest, agriculture, railways, atomic energy, defense, chemicals, science and technology, telecommunication, urban employment, poverty elimination, rural development, and India Meteorological Department as members of the authority. The authority would meet as often as required and review the status of a warning system, mitigation measures, and disaster preparedness. When a disaster strikes, the authority will coordinate disaster management activities. The authority, in short, will be responsible of all those actions which are on your screen. That is coordinating, mandating government's policies for disaster reduction and mitigation, ensuring adequate preparedness at all levels in order to meet the disasters, then coordinating response to disaster when it strikes, coordination of post-disaster relief and rehabilitation. Then coming to the National Emergency Management Authority will have a core permanent secretariat with three divisions, one for disaster prevention, the second for mitigation and rehabilitation is the last one. The other for preparedness and the you can say the third for human resource development. I repeat, the National Emergency Management Authority will have a core permanent secretariat with three divisions. Just note it down. The first for the disaster preparedness, mitigation, and rehabilitation. The second for the preparedness, and the third for the human resource development. At the state level, as indicated in para, disaster management was being handled by the Department of Relief and Rehabilitation. As the name suggests, the focus was almost entirely on post calamity relief. The government of India is working with the state governments to convert the Department of Relief and Rehabilitation into Department of Disaster Management with an enhanced area of responsibility to include mitigation and preparedness apart from their prevent responsibilities of relief and rehabilitation. The changeover has already happened in 8 state governments, union territories, administrations. The change is under process in all the other states. The states have been also asked to set up disaster management authorities under the chief minister and ministers of relevant department: water resource, agriculture, drinking water supply, environment and forest, urban development, home, rural development, etc. as the members. So, the objective of the setting up an authority is to ensure that the mitigation and preparedness is seen as the joint responsibility of all the departments concerned, and the disaster management concerns are mainstreamed into their programs. The holistic and multidisciplinary approach is the key to the effective mitigation. At the district level, the district magistrate, who is the chief coordinator, will be the focal point for coordinating all the activities relating to the prevention, mitigation, and preparedness apart from his existing responsibilities that are pertaining to the response and relief. The district coordination and relief committee is being reconstituted, redesigned into disaster management committee, with the officers from the relevant departments being added as the members. Because of its enhanced mandate of mitigation and prevention, the district heads and the departments engaged in development will now be added to the committee, as that mitigation and prevention is mainstreamed into the district plan. The existing system of drawing up preparedness and response plans will continue. There will, however, also be a long-term mitigation plan. District Disaster Management Committee have already been constituted in several districts and are as in process of being constituted in the remaining multi-hazard prone districts. Similarly, we are in the process of creating block, taluka, and disaster management committee in these levels in these 169 multi-hazard prone districts in 17 states. At the village level in 169 multi-hazard prone district, we are constituting district management committee and disaster management teams. Each village will have a disaster management plan. The process of drafting the plan has already begun. The Disaster Management Committee, which draws up the plan, consists of elected representatives at the village level, local authorities, government functionaries, and including doctors, paramedics of the primary health centers, located in the village, primary school, teachers, etc. The plan encompasses the prevention, mitigation, and preparedness measures. The disaster management teams at the village level will consist of members of voluntary organizations like you can say Nehru Yuvak Kendra and other non-governmental organizations, as well as able-bodied volunteers from the village. The team are provided basic training in the evacuation, search and rescue, etc. The Disaster Management Committee will review the disaster management plan at least once in a year. It would also generate awareness among the people in the village about do's and don'ts for specific hazard depending on the vulnerability of the village. A large number of village level disaster management committee and disaster management teams that have already been constituted. Now, the states have been advised to enact disaster management acts. These acts provide for adequate powers for authorities coordinating mitigation, preparedness and response, as well as mitigation prevention measures that are required to be undertaken. Two states, Gujarat and MP, Madhya Pradesh, have already enacted such a law. Other states are in the process. The state governments have also been advised to convert their relief codes into the disaster management codes by the including aspects of prevention, mitigation, and preparedness. In order to further institutionalize the new approach, the government of India have decided to enunciate a national policy on disaster management. A draft policy have accordingly been formulated and is expected to be put in place shortly. The policy shall inform all the spheres of the central government activities and shall take the precedence over all the existing several policies. The broad objective of the policy are to minimize the loss of life and social, private, and community assets because of the natural or man-made disasters and contribute to the sustainable development and better standards of living for all. More specifically for the poor and vulnerable sections by ensuring that the development gains are not lost through natural calamities or disasters. The policy notes that the state governments are primarily responsible for the disaster management, including prevention and mitigation, while the government of India provides assistance where necessary and the part of norms laid down from time to time and proposes to this overall framework may continue. However, since the response to a disaster requires coordination of resources available across all these departments of the government, the policy mandates that the central government will, in conjunction with the state governments, seek to ensure that such a coordination mechanism is laid down through an appropriate chain of command so that mobilization of resources is facilitated. The broad features we can say of the policy we can discuss here as a holistic and a proactive approach for prevention, mitigation, and preparedness will be adopted for the disaster management. Each ministry, department of the central state government will set apart an appropriate quantum of funds under the plan for the specific schemes, projects addressing the vulnerability reduction and preparedness. When there is a shelf of projects addressing mitigation will be given priority. Mitigation measures shall be built into the ongoing schemes programs. Each project in the hazard prone area will have mitigation as an essential term of reference. The project report will include a statement as to how the project addresses vulnerability reduction. Next is the community involvement. and awareness generation, particularly that of the vulnerable segments of the population and the women, has emphasized as necessary for sustainable disaster risk reduction. This is a critical component of the policy since communities are the first responders to the disasters, and therefore unless they are empowered and made capable of managing disasters, any amount of external support cannot lead to the optional or you can say optimal results. There will be close interaction with the cooperative sector, non-governmental organizations, and media in the national efforts for the disaster prevention and vulnerability reduction. So, the next is the institutional structures. Appropriate claim, appropriate chain of command will be built up, and the appropriate training imparted to the disaster managers at various levels to ensure coordinated and quick response at all the levels, and development of interstate arrangements for sharing of resources during emergencies. Then next we can say a culture of planning and preparedness is to be inculcated at all the levels for the capacity building measures. Then next is standard operating procedures SOPs and disaster management plans at the state and district levels as well as by the relevant central government departments, and for handling of specific disaster will be laid down. Construction design must correspond to the requirement as laid down in the relevant Indian standards. All the lifeline buildings in seismic zones 3, 4, and 5, hospital, railways, stations, airports, airport control towers, then next is your fire station buildings, bus stands, major administrative centers will need to be evaluated and, if necessary, be retrofitted. The existing relief codes in the states will be revised to develop them into the disaster management codes manuals for institutionalizing the planning process with the particular attention to the mitigation and preparedness. With the above all these mentioned institutional mechanism and policy framework in position and the action taken to implement the policy guidelines, it is expected that the task of moving towards vulnerability reduction will be greatly facilitated. So, this is the current position of India in relation to disaster management, the new national disaster management policy, and the various institutions, authorities, and ministries, departments involved in the process of disaster management. So this is all for today's lecture. See you in the next lecture with the another topic. Thank you. Have a nice day.